Chapter 6. Elle stared out the window as Adam's private jet circled London's Heathrow Airport. This had only been her second time flying. The first was when she was a little girl and she'd flown to Hawaii with her mother and father to visit her aunt. The flight had been smooth and incredibly comfortable. She could get used to leather chairs that you could sink into and so much space to move around. Soon the plane began its descent. Elle sucked in air and held her breath for a moment. "You okay?" Adam sat beside her, holding her hand. "Yes, I just get a little nervous on the landing," she breathed out slowly. "I can tell." Adam winced, looking down at red marks where her nails had dug into his skin. "Oh, I'm sorry, Adam. I didn't mean to maim you." Elle rubbed her hand gently on his, hoping to ease the pain. "Don't worry about it. Happy to help." Adam winked at her and grinned. Soon the plane taxied to the gate where they would disembark. Elle was glad that Adam had given her time to settle things at the bank before they left Seattle. The title deed to her dad's ranch was now paid in full. A big burden had been lifted off of her. Now it was the time to fulfill her part of the marriage agreement with Adam. She was determined to make this a fun trip for both of them. "Before we left this morning, you said where we're going was a surprise, but do I get any more clues?" Elle had always had a difficult time waiting for surprises, especially when she was certain it was going to be good. "First, we'll go to our family's penthouse in London. Then I'll take you shopping." Adam stood up and indicated for her to walk ahead of him. "All right." Elle looked down at her clothes, realizing that the dress slacks and pink blouse she wore were probably outdated. She couldn't remember the last time she'd bought new clothes, always preferring the wonderful deals at the thrift store. But she needed to think of Adam. Most likely he needed his wife to wear something more in line with the image and brand for his company. She hoped the shopping wouldn't take too long so they could see the sights here in London. The two flight attendants stood waiting for them at the door with big smiles on their faces. "Thank you for taking good care of us today." Elle nodded at them and the pilot and co-pilot who stood behind them. "Yes, Jenny and Jane, thank you for the great service, as always." Adam nodded at the flight attendants, then looked at the pilots. "Thank you, Jim and David, for another smooth flight." "Any time, Mr. Stevenson." Elle looked at Adam and appreciated the warmth of his smile and consideration for people. She wished more people were like that. She noticed these small kindnesses that Adam did had subtly changed her perspective of him. As they walked up to the limousine, the chauffeur held the door open for them. Before long, the limousine took them to the underground parking deck of Adam's high-rise. Stepping out of the private elevator that led to the top floor, Adam keyed in the code and opened the door to his suite. Elle gasped at the huge windows and high ceilings as she walked into the penthouse. Besides that, everything was white and spacious with a wonderfully large kitchen, too. "This is amazing." "There's a lot of space, but it feels too stark, almost like we're in a hospital." Adam ran a hand through his hair. "Why don't you change it up a little?" Elle walked past the white sofas toward the white walls and massive windows. "None of us ever has the time. We fly here a few times a year, and then we leave for home again. But if you'd like to hire a decorator to make some changes, my entire family would appreciate it." Adam stood next to her. "I could do that." Elle looked around the room, but was drawn back to the sun shining through the window. "Oh, Adam, what a gorgeous view." Elle sighed, as she could see almost all the city of London from the high-rise. "I agree." She turned her head only to see Adam's blue gaze fixed on her. She flushed. Elle felt a little awkward today without her usual jeans, t-shirt, and ponytail. When Adam said he had a surprise trip in mind this morning, she had just put on the nicest outfit and left her hair down. Today she was doing all sorts of things that she hardly ever did. "Your blonde hair has reddish highlights that shine in the sun. I like it when you wear your hair down." He twirled a thick strand of hair around his fingers. "Thank you, Adam. I hardly ever wear my hair down. When I'm working, it just gets in the way. Elle nervously pushed back a stray strand of hair from her face. I understand, but this week is about fun, so you don't have to worry about being practical. Adam let go of her hair, and his hand brushed her shoulder like a caress. Tingles of pleasure dotted her arm where he touched her. That's true. It'll be nice to have some downtime. Elle could feel the air between them charged with the electricity of their attraction for each other. Her chest constricted, afraid of her desire for her new husband. She took a few steps back, quickly changing the subject. Well, as part of the fun, how about if I take you up on your offer to do some shopping? Yes, of course. We'll go to Bond Street and possibly a few other places. Albert can drive us and drop us off. It didn't take long until they were back in the underground parking and climbing into the limousine whisked off to the streets of high fashion. Elle felt out of her element as Adam led her to stores where the price tags were more than she made in a year. The store clerk proudly reminded them of what they'd seen on the store window. Their exclusive store was a royal warrant holder where the Queen and the royal family shopped for their clothes. The clerk took Elle to the back to try on different dresses and pants and blouses that were of the finest quality and highlighted her slim curves. With each piece of clothing she tried on, she walked out to the room where Adam waited to get his thoughts on it. With most of the clothes she tried on, he nodded that she should keep them. After spending 2 hours, Elle walked out of the dressing room to find Adam handing over his credit card for the largest pile of designer clothes she'd ever seen. The clerks were busy folding and putting the clothes into large bags. I don't need everything. One of each would be enough, Elle whispered in Adam's ear as she stared in shock at the huge pile of clothing and the amounts being added to the bill. Al, let me do this for you, okay? Adam turned to her, a most persuasive smile hovering on his lips. I don't know. It's just so much. Well, you'll need to get used to it. Her husband gave her a cocky wink. All right. Thank you. Al realized Adam wanted her to have the nice clothes so she would fit in at the exclusive places he had in mind. They walked out to the waiting car, and the driver drove them to the penthouse. As soon as they entered Adam's condo, Al's curiosity got the better of her. Is there someplace special we're going? Another surprise? Do you always want to know my secrets ahead of time? Adam turned to her and put his hands on his hips, his blue eyes pointed and perceptive. I've been known to have trouble waiting for good surprises, yes. Elle curled her lips into a saucy smile. If his half-grin was any indication, he knew she was going stir-crazy, waiting for him to spill the beans. Well, I was going to wait until tomorrow, but I might as well tell you now. Adam leaned against the doorframe, watching her closely. We're going to the Royal Ascot horse race. It starts tomorrow, which is why I wanted you to have plenty of choices on what to wear. As if on cue, a knock sounded at the door. Adam answered it, and 2 people from the store arrived with large bags with her recent purchases. They worked quickly to hang the clothes in the closet of her room. Just before they left, Adam handed each of them a generous tip. Elle was overwhelmed and amazed, all at the same time, with the royal treatment she received today. Oh, I'm so excited. I've dreamed of going, but only ever talked about it with my dad. Elle hurried over to Adam and threw her arms around his waist. She hugged him and giggled at the thought of finally going to this race. Thank you, Adam. This is going to be so good. Suddenly she realized that she clung to Adam's waist. She stepped back, and his arms lazily slid off her waist. Nervously, she busied herself with sorting through the clothes that now hung in neat rows in her closet. It will be good, because I get to spend the day with a beautiful woman who also happens to like horse racing. Adam grinned and folded his arms across his chest. Thanks. A blush rose from her neck to her cheeks. She couldn't believe he thought she was beautiful. She peered up at Adam, her hands fidgeting at her sides. With her cheeks still heated from his gaze, Elle hurried past him toward the kitchen. How would she endure a full week or more of Adam's nearness without giving in to her desires and kissing him? Adam placed his hand on the small of Elle's back. They walked through the open set of double doors that led to the royal enclosure of the Royal Ascot horse racing event. Elle looked beautiful in the short-sleeved, off-white dress designed by Alexander McQueen. Her large white hat and matching shoes, as well as the confident way she walked, made her look like a princess. It was all he could do to keep from kissing her. He almost did last night, but Elle had subtly shifted away from him. He didn't know why. He could sense she wanted him too. The sizzling kiss they shared on their wedding day proved it. Adjusting the collar of his dress shirt and tie under his morning coat, Adam tried to cool himself a little. He told himself it was the sweltering heat that made him feel the need to cool off, but he knew better. Just being near the woman beside him brought a simmering heat all its own. He would need to be vigilant about safeguarding his own resolve. His fake wife was affecting him in unexpected ways that had started to break down the walls he carefully built around his heart. Adam knew his fears weren't only because his ex-fiancée had used and betrayed him. He was also terrified that history would repeat itself, that someone else he loved would die, that he would fail to protect somebody he loved, that the death of another person he adored and was responsible to protect would be on his hands. Today, he needed to make sure that person wasn't his wife. He was glad they had arrived early to see the Queen arrive with Prince Charles and Camilla the Duchess of Cornwall by her side in a carriage pulled by 4 white horses. Her Majesty waved to the thousands of people gathered for the opening ceremony before going to the royal family's private box. Adam, this is so amazing to see the royal family and to be at the Royal Ascot race. Elle swung her head his way, her eyes glowing and her smile radiant. I see the horses being lined up to begin the race. The horses and their jockeys all wore their owners' colors as they encircled the starting gate. Some horses danced nervously before being coaxed into the starting gate. After a few minutes, they were all lined up. Just so you know, the announcer and the organizers of the race won't draw much attention to a horse that isn't part of the Queen's own thoroughbreds. Her Majesty does love her horses, Adam whispered to Elle. That's okay. I'll still cheer for my favorite horse. The slightly nasal sound of the announcer's voice was heard loudly over the loudspeaker, announcing the lineup of horses. They're ready. Adam grinned at the excitement in Elle's voice. It had been the right decision to bring her to this horse race. He'd never known anyone as crazy about horses as Elle Jennings. And they're off. The announcer began to give the audience a play-by-play of the action on the track. Number 3, with the blue colors, is in the lead. That looks like a horse that has strength and endurance, Adam whispered to Elle, whose eyes were glued to the race. Yes, that horse's name is 𝙤𝙤. Elle looked down at her pamphlet where all the horses were listed along with their jockeys and owners. But that's not the horse I'm cheering for. Which horse are you hoping will win? Adam bumped his shoulder against Elle's to gain her attention. I'm cheering for the horse with the red colors. He's number 5. Elle looked up to see the horses as they rounded the corner and sighed. It's the horse that's in last place. Why would you cheer for a horse that's so far behind? I'm a sucker for the underdog, and I also have a gut feeling about this horse. His name is Justice. Elle's wide grin and the sparkle in her eyes made him feel like there was some secret he was missing out on. Well, he has now passed 2 other horses who were falling behind. Adam was surprised that her gut instinct seemed to be on track. They watched the horses round the final bend on the racetrack and head toward the finish line. Soon Justice had passed all the other horses with only 1 other in the lead. It looked like it would be a match race between Justice and 𝙤𝙤. Faster, Justice, faster! Elle whispered her cheer for the horse, her knuckles turning white on the clutch purse in her hands. It was only in the last 50 feet that Justice managed to pull into the lead. Justice certainly has surprised us, the announcer's monotone voice began. From underdog to winner, he first started racing 6 months ago. This is Justice's first win, and a big victory for this horse and its owners. Elle clapped her hands at the win of her favorite horse and turned to Adam with a big grin. He wanted to kiss her, but knew that needed to wait. "Let's go down to the restaurant and get something to eat. I already reserved us a table for luncheon." Adam held her hand as they walked to the elevator that took them to the fine dining restaurant. The waiter led them to a corner table that overlooked the lush greenery of the course. After they had given their order to the waiter, she glanced around. "This is incredible." Elle looked at the bright lights and flowers that dotted the room and the tables. "I've never been in a restaurant as fine as this. I'll need to store all of what I've experienced today in my memory file." "What's a memory file?" "It's where I keep all my very special memories in life. I write it down in a book and include pictures if I have them, and then I also commit it to memory. That way I can withdraw a memory whenever I need to." Elle took a sip of water and looked at him, a small smile hovering over her lips. "I've never heard of a memory file before. That sounds like a good way to keep track of special memories." Adam wondered what other details his wife remembered. "It is, and you can pull them out whenever you miss someone or feel like you need encouragement that day." "What is special about today that you want to remember?" Adam's curiosity got the better of him. He really wanted to know her better. "Coming to the Royal Ascot race and seeing the royal family up close was great, and of course sharing a meal with you in this fine restaurant is on the top of the list." He smiled and watched her cheeks turn a deep shade of pink. "I'm glad to hear it. Anything else?" "Yes, I really loved seeing Justice. It was a pleasure just to get to see him run. That horse seems to love running just for the sheer pleasure of it. That's the kind of horse I would love to have as my own." Elle's expression turned dreamy for a minute before she came down to earth. "I know, it's wishful thinking, but hey, a girl can dream, right?" "Of course. And I'm glad you enjoyed that race. I think your favorite horse races again in a few days. We'll need to make sure we're here for that." "I'd love that." The waiter brought their food, and they enjoyed eating in companionable silence for a few minutes. "What else have you kept in your memory file, Elle? Do you recall sneaking into Gran's stables?" Adam grinned as her face turned slightly red. "Yeah, I'm sorry I snuck in, but I couldn't resist riding Big Red." Elle frowned a little, remembering. "You were quite daring as a rider when you were young. I remember telling you the one time that you needed to be more cautious when riding a racing horse. It's too risky. You could be seriously hurt." Adam had wanted to protect her, but Elle got angry at him for trying to stop her fun. "I remember. I yelled at you that day." Elle slipped her hand in his. "Sorry for that." "That's okay. I'm just glad you weren't hurt." "I wasn't hurt because you were always there to protect me." The corners of Elle's lips turned up as she remembered. "Besides, I wasn't the only one who liked racing those thoroughbreds. If I remember correctly, you were on Cowgirl, racing against me on Big Red. I seem to remember I won that one." Elle's grin of triumph pricked Adam's memory of when she was a young girl. "And I remember your younger self telling me that if I tried harder next time, I might have a chance at winning." Adam sat back in his chair and wiped his lips and hands with a napkin. "You were a feisty one back then. Not much has changed." "I'll take that as a compliment." "You should." A half smile lifted the corners of his mouth. "Those races back then were some of my fondest memories. I think that's why I'm passionate to see that old racetrack restored. I also want to ask a restoration architect to restore and bring that sprawling old ranch house back to life." "Adam, that's a wonderful idea. It might be fun when the racetrack is restored to start horse races for Paradise Lake and surrounding communities." Elle spoke softly. "I remember your dad telling me that restoring the racetrack back to its original condition of how it was in Gran's day would bring life back into our small town." Adam smiled fondly at the memory. "Your dad was such an encouraging mentor and friend. I still miss him." "Me too." Elle gently wiped a tear on her cheek, and her eyes became shuttered. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to make you sad." Adam berated himself for bringing up memories of her father. He should have known that would cause her pain. "It's okay. Let's let's talk about something else." Her forced smile proved she wasn't really okay. Adam nodded. He was determined to do what he could to see Elle's eyes light up with happiness once again.